Right. So, you know those places everyone talks about, like they're magical, and then you get there and you're like, wait, what?
Oh, yeah, the
Yeah.
ones that look amazing in pictures and movies.
Totally. So in this deep dive, we're talking about those kind of over-romanticized destinations. You know those places that don't quite live up to the hype?
Right, right.
You sent over this video script called Five Over-Romanticized Places in the World. And it really gets into like why these places maybe aren't all they're cracked up to be.
Yeah, yeah.
So we're going to look at a few spots: Paris, Venice, Bali, Santorini, even the Maldives, and kind of do a reality check on all those dreamy expectations.
I'm excited.
Me too. Okay, so first up, Paris, the city of love. I mean, who hasn't dreamt of, like, walking along the Seine, holding hands, having a picnic under the Eiffel Tower?
It's definitely iconic.
Yeah. But this script points out the stuff nobody really talks about. The crowds, the prices, even tourist scams.
Right, and I think that's what happens when a city becomes, like, the symbol of romance.
It's a victim of its own success, basically.
Pretty much.
And there's this quote from a tourist in the script that really got me. They said, "I thought it would feel magical, but honestly, it's a lot more chaotic than I expected."
I've heard that before.
Yeah, and that feeling of just being another tourist, not really experiencing the real Paris. I think that's something that happens in a lot of these over-romanticized places.
Absolutely.
Okay, next we're going to Venice. You know, the city built on water, gondolas, amazing buildings, those bridges. It all seems so dreamy, right?
Venice has its own unique challenges, though.
What do you mean?
Well, it's built on a lagoon, so the city is really delicate, and all those tourists can really put a strain on it, you know?
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
Plus, it can get so crowded.
Totally. And the script mentions those gondola rides are like $80.
Makes you wonder if you're paying for the experience or just the Instagram photo.
For real. Okay, let's switch gears completely. We're heading to Bali now. Lush jungles, peaceful beaches, those spiritual retreats. It all sounds like paradise, doesn't it?
It does, but Bali is interesting because its popularity has kind of backfired in some ways.
How so?
Well, tourism has boosted the economy, but it's also put pressure on resources, and it's changing the culture.
So it's not all Zen vibes and yoga retreats?
Not always, no. The script mentions crowded tourist spots, inflated prices, and tons of digital nomads, which can change the whole feel of a place.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, if everyone's looking for the same authentic experience, does it even exist anymore?
That's a great question. It talks about how even those hidden spots get crowded, and the peacefulness is constantly interrupted by, like, scooters and people taking selfies.
So much for finding inner peace.
Right. Okay, now let's go to Santorini. Those iconic white buildings, those sunsets.
Yeah.
It's easy to see why people think it's so romantic.
Definitely. But isn't it, like, super crowded, too?
Exactly. Santorini is small, so all those tourists put a huge strain on it, especially during peak season.
The script doesn't hold back either. Talks about crazy prices, tons of people from cruise ships, and just not enough space.
Right, and when you think about it, is it really romantic to watch the sunset with hundreds of other people all trying to get the same photo?
It's like, are you experiencing the sunset or just documenting it for social media?
Right, and the script even says the streets get gridlocked during peak season. Not exactly the peaceful island getaway you might imagine.
Not at all. Okay, last stop on our reality check, tour the Maldives. The ultimate romantic escape, or so they say.
Ah, the Maldives. Beautiful, yes, but there's a lot more to the story.
Like what?
Well, first of all, it's incredibly expensive.
Mm-hmm.
And there's not a ton to do besides, like, lay on the beach and snorkel.
So you're paying a lot for a very specific kind of experience.
Yeah, and then there's the whole environmental side of things. The Maldives are super vulnerable to climate change.
So it's kind of a paradise with a ticking clock.
Yeah, I mean, rising sea levels are a huge threat. It makes you think about the impact of all that tourism, right?
Yep. Definitely food for thought. Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here, and it seems like there's a pretty big gap between the fantasy and the reality of these places. But in our next segment, I want to get into how to avoid falling into that trap of over-romanticization. You know, how can we set realistic expectations without totally killing our wanderlust?
Sounds good to me. Let's do it. Welcome back. So, we've been talking about all these, like, overhyped destinations.
Yeah, and I think we've uncovered some not so pretty truths about these supposedly perfect places.
Right, but, before everyone panics and cancels their trips,
Yeah, please don't do that.
let's, like, shift gears a little.
Okay.
Instead of just focusing on the bad stuff, what can we actually learn from all this?
That's a good point. So, like, how do we avoid falling for all the hype and setting ourselves up for disappointment?
Well, I think step one is Doing your research. Don't just rely on Instagram or travel shows.
Yeah, those are always going to show the best case scenario.
Exactly. Look for different perspectives, read blogs, maybe even watch a documentary or two.
Talk to people who've actually been there.
Exactly. Get the real scoop, the good, the bad, and the.
The smelly canals of Venice.
Exactly. And it's also super important to think about what you actually want out of a trip. Like, what's your travel style?
Yeah, are you someone who loves being in the middle of the action, or do you prefer peace and quiet?
Right. Knowing yourself helps you choose destinations that actually fit.
Totally. But let's say you do have your heart set on one of those iconic places. Is there any way to make it more authentic?
Oh, absolutely. One thing you can try is traveling during the off-season, like spring or fall,
Fewer crowds, maybe better weather,
and often better prices, too.
bonus.
Another tip, don't be afraid to get off the beaten path. Explore those lesser-known areas.
Yeah, ditch the tourist traps.
Exactly. And sometimes it's good to slow down, spend a few extra days in one place instead of trying to see everything.
I love that idea. Like, really soak it in.
Right, it's about quality over quantity. And the video script also mentions choosing less touristy destinations altogether, places that offer authentic experiences without all the crowds and the cliches.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Give me some examples.
All right, so instead of Paris, maybe consider Prague. Beautiful architecture, tons of history, but way less crowded.
Ooh, I like that.
Or if you're thinking about Bali, how about Laos?
Laos.
It's in Southeast Asia, amazing landscapes, ancient temples, and it's just like super laid back.
Sounds pretty amazing.
And if you're dreaming of the Maldives but worried about the environmental impact, the Seychelles could be a good alternative.
Okay.
They have those picture-perfect beaches, but they're also really focused on conservation.
So it's like paradise with a conscience.
Yeah, exactly. These are just a few ideas, of course.
Yeah, there are tons of hidden gems out there.
The point is, be open to new discoveries, be willing to go off the map, and don't be afraid to get a little lost.
I'm all about that. And travel isn't just about checking things off a list.
Right, it's about connecting with different cultures.
Having those like unforgettable experiences.
Exactly. And sometimes the best memories are made in those unexpected places, away from the tourist hordes. But you know what? We haven't really answered that big question from earlier.
Oh yeah, about finding authenticity even in those super touristy spots.
Right. Is it even possible? That's what we're going to tackle next.
So we've been talking about all these overhyped places, the ones that don't always live up to the hype.
Right, right.
But now I want to get into this question we asked before, like, can you actually have an authentic experience in those like super touristy spots?
It's a tough one, for sure. I think it comes down to what we even mean by authentic.
Okay, so it's not just about like dodging crowds.
Right. It's more about like how you approach the experience, even if there are tons of people around.
So instead of being bummed that the Trevi fountain is packed,
Yeah,
maybe you find a cute cafe nearby and just like soak in the atmosphere.
exactly. It's those little moments, those glimpses of local life that can make it feel real.
I get it. And I guess it's also about being open to like going off script.
Totally.
Yeah.
Ditch the itinerary, wander down a random street, who knows what you'll find.
Stumble upon a hidden courtyard, have a chat with a local.
Those are the kinds of memories that stick with you.
For sure. So let's say someone's really set on going to Paris, but they're worried about the crowds. What would you tell them?
I'd say think about what you really love about Paris. Is it the art, the food, the history? Then find experiences that tap into that, even if it means skipping the Eiffel Tower.
So like maybe take a cooking class instead of fighting the crowds at the Louvre.
Exactly. It's about engaging with the culture on a deeper level.
Making it personal.
Yeah. And honestly, those connections can happen anywhere. You might chat with someone in a park, share a smile over coffee.
Or just like get lost in the beauty of a place, even for a minute.
Exactly. So for anyone listening who's dreaming of those iconic destinations, don't give up on them.
Don't be scared off by the crowds.
Right. Challenge yourself to go deeper, to connect with the local culture in your own way.
Because at the end of the day, travel is about creating your own WMN story, right?
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah.
So go out there, explore, be curious, and most importantly, have fun.
And on that note, we're wrapping up our deep dive into over-romanticized destinations. Thanks for joining us.
Until next time.
Keep those adventures authentic.